Welcome to episode 1 of Chasing the Stick, the history of Naughty Dog during the PS4 era. My name is Max Roberts. Chasing the Stick is the definitive history of video game developer Naughty Dog from 2013 through 2020. You may actually listen to or read the entire project right now. The full audio story is available right here in this feed, and you may read the entire story at maxfrequency.net or at chasingthestick.com. I decided to break up the 6 parts of my history into individual episodes as well, for more choice for you, the listener. This episode explores the genesis of this project and the scope of Naughty Dog's work from 2013 through 2020. I hope you enjoy. Quote, "We feel that the interactive medium has an untapped potential to touch the feelings of the player. You have that connectivity. The fact that I am actually in the world and participating in what's happening on the screen in front of me gives us some sort of advantage to make you feel connected with what's actually happening. At Naughty Dog, that's what we're trying to do, is pair story and gameplay together. If we can make you feel like you're actually with these characters on a journey, and you're invested in those stories and those characters, then you're feeling, in theory, the same thing that they're feeling." End quote. Bruce Straley. Quote, "All men dream, but not equally. Those who dream by night, in the dusty recesses of their minds, wake in the day to find that it was vanity. But the dreamers of the day are dangerous men, for they may act their dream with open eyes to make it possible. This I did." End quote. T.E. Lawrence, used in the opening of Uncharted 3, Drake's Deception. Quote, "After all we've been through, after everything I've done, it can't be for nothing." End quote. Ellie, The Last of Us. I've always had an inclination toward Naughty Dog and their games. I first saw the Crash Bandicoot games around 2001, 2002 as a first or second grader at a neighbor's house. I was a Nintendo kid growing up, but I liked going over to their house just to play Crash. I thought Crash was cool. Around that same time, the Jak and Daxter games were also being released. I mooched a PS2 off a different neighbor to play bits and pieces of that series. I'd also be introduced to other PlayStation classics like Sly Cooper and Kingdom Hearts. It was my early indoctrination into the PlayStation Nation. I'd finally get my own PS2 secondhand around 2007, and the first games I bought were from those 3 series. The next Naughty Dog game I'd catch a glimpse of would alter my attention toward the studio from a passerby to an active seeker. Probably around 2009, I saw a demo kiosk for a PS3 and Uncharted 2 Among Thieves inside a Target. I remember the demo vividly. It was the first section when you arrive in Nepal. A massive armored truck chases you down an alley while you run and shoot at its grill and engine. At the end of the alley, when I felt like I was running low on ammo, the truck burst into flames, and I escaped. But I didn't really do those things. The character, who I didn't know at the time, Nathan Drake, did them. I just controlled it. I think a connection was made then and there. Instead of using a cutscene, Naughty Dog games let me control the action and the story, unlike anything I had experienced before. From then on, I was trying to get my hands on a PS3 and was acutely aware of Naughty Dog's next game. Uncharted 3 Drake's Deception was incoming, and I could not wait. The reveal demo of the Burning Chateau blew my mind. I want to get my own PS3 until Christmas 2011, bundled with Uncharted 3. I played the first few opening chapters before putting the game down, determined to play the series in order. I borrowed Uncharted Drake's Fortune from a neighbor on Christmas Day. I played the entire game in one sitting the next day, with my PS3 hooked up to my CRT television. I wasn't even playing in HD. I'd then go out and buy Uncharted 2, and then finally play Uncharted 3. A few weeks prior to that Christmas, on December 10th, 2011, the Spike Video Game Awards revealed Naughty Dog's next game, The Last of Us. Leading into the awards, other teasers were dropped like breadcrumbs. I remember watching the Cordyceps fungus video and seeing the cracked newspaper casing. I was hooked from the get-go before Naughty Dog was even attached to the game. Finally having my own PS3 just a couple of weeks later, I was eagerly anticipating The Last of Us. I went on a total media blackout for it, even hiding my eyes and plugging my ears during the trailer at movie theaters. Naughty Dog was my reason to own a PS3. I remember reviews for The Last of Us dropped on my birthday in 2013. Reading Colin Moriarty's 10 out of 10 review on IGN was like unwrapping a birthday present. The game launched just over a week later on June 14th, 2013. It is a time I will never forget. I think the powerful allure of Naughty Dog games comes down to their uncanny ability to intertwine gameplay and storytelling. A saying that I've probably heard before but never clicked with me until writing the story is telling it on the stick. Simply put, it's a design decision to tell as much of the story via gameplay as possible, using the joysticks before text boxes or cutscenes to tell the narrative. This actively puts the player in the shoes of the character, creating a unique, empathetic bond. It clicks with the players on an emotional level. It certainly has with me. As The Last of Us Part 2 nears its release on June 19th, 2020, I had an idea to write a history/editorial on the game. I had done so for The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild and Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. This seemed like a logical next history piece for me. I love looking back, gathering context, and analyzing how a game came to be. I find it educational and helpful to provide all of that information in one place. My eagerness and drive quickly got the better of me. What started out as an idea to explore the history of The Last of Us Part 2 has, in a Naughty Dog-like fashion, turned into something more ambitious than I anticipated. I want to take a look at Naughty Dog's PS4 legacy, analyze their game design, explore their developmental history, and compile it all into one place. The Last of Us Part 2 didn't just happen out of thin air. It is a sum of years of hard work, lessons learned, and the tireless pursuit of perfectionism. This is the history of Naughty Dog and their journey with the PS4. Part 1. Introduction. Naughty Dog by the numbers. If you are listening to this as the podcast/audiobook that I made, each of the graphs that I am about to talk about have been used as custom chapter art, which your podcast player may support. If not, you can check out the links in the description or go to maxfrequency.net to see them. I had a thought sometime in early 2020. While thinking about The Last of Us Part 2, it dawned on me how many games Naughty Dog managed to release on the PS4 in the span of nearly 7 years. That thought evolved into a question. How did the rest of Sony's first-party studios stack up in that same window of time? Sony has had a remarkable trend throughout the PS4's lifecycle of delaying first-party titles, giving their developers extra time to make their games better. Regularly, Sony allowed blockbuster titles to be pushed out of the highly coveted holiday shopping season. It seemed that quality was more important than hitting an internally targeted release date. Sony first-party releases bar graph. This chart counts The Last of Us Part 2 from Naughty Dog and Ghost of Tsushima from Sucker Punch. It does not include Horizon Zero Dawn: The Frozen Wilds DLC from Guerrilla. It is important to note that Insomniac was purchased by Sony in 2019, near the end of the generation. Up until the purchase, Insomniac made numerous second-party titles for various platforms of varying quality. Insomniac has released 14 games since 2014, according to Wikipedia, far outpacing any Sony first-party studio. This data focuses solely on their PS4 exclusives during that time. The clear king of output is San Diego Studio, with their annualized MLB The Show series and the one-off game Killstring. Tying Naughty Dog for output is both London Studio and Japan Studio. London Studio released 2 SingStar titles and 2 PlayStation VR games, PSVR Worlds and Blood and Truth. Japan Studio, while publishing partners for quite a few games, developed Knack 2, Gravity Rush 2, and Astrobot Rescue Mission. I also discovered that Japan Studio is a 3-team studio. Quantity does not always translate to critical quality, though. Sony first-party Metacritic scores column chart. This chart was made before The Last of Us Part 2 and Ghost of Tsushima were released and reviewed critically. 2017 was by far the busiest year, but doesn't have quite the range and quality that 2014 did. All in all, Sony seems to have decent scores for the first-party titles. Naughty Dog has 2 titles comfortably in the 90s, while Uncharted: The Lost Legacy sits at an 84. They also barely beat out Sony Santa Monica's God of War with a 94, with The Last of Us Remastered, which sits at a 95. Remember, this is all before The Last of Us Part 2 has been released and reviewed. Sony first-party Metacritic average scores. This chart was made before The Last of Us Part 2 and Ghost of Tsushima were released and reviewed critically. Taking each studio and averaging their whole team's scores throughout the generation continues to show a good track record for Sony's first-party studios. Sony Santa Monica beats out Naughty Dog here because Sony Santa Monica only released 1 game, while Naughty Dog released 3 as of this writing. Here's a closer look at the studio's averages that match Naughty Dog's output. Sony first-party studio Metacritic score averages with 3 or more releases. This chart was made before The Last of Us Part 2 and Ghost of Tsushima were released and reviewed critically. Sucker Punch is not included since Ghost of Tsushima will be their 3rd game this generation. Naughty Dog has a 10-plus point lead ahead of second place, San Diego Studio. It is important again to mention that San Diego Studio has double the output of Naughty Dog due to the annualized nature of the MLB The Show series. As for how all of this quantity and quality translates to sales, I don't have a conclusive answer. Video game sales are not as well defined as other industries. The only concrete numbers come directly from the publisher when they feel like sharing them, typically at significant milestones. According to my research, I found seemingly conflicting data, so I decided to share both sides of the information that I found. Searching for PS4 exclusive sales on Google will quickly pull up a Wikipedia page with, you guessed it, the top-selling PS4 exclusives. Looking at first-party exclusives, Uncharted 4 takes the cake at 16 million units, with Marvel Spider-Man in second place with 13.2 million units. The middle range includes members of the 10 million club, like God of War and The Last of Us Remastered. The bottom of the table has early PS4 titles like Killzone Shadowfall and Knack. I have a hard time imagining those early launch titles haven't been bumped off. Websites like VG Charts claim titles like Uncharted: The Lost Legacy have sold 2.4 million units, which beats out Killzone and Knack combined. Matt Piscatella from the MPD Group tweeted a list of the top-selling PS4 exclusives in the United States based on dollar sales, physical and digital copies, with Marvel Spider-Man at the top. Uncharted 4 was in 4th behind God of War and Horizon Zero Dawn. It seems contradictory to the reports of Uncharted 4 selling nearly 3 million more copies than Marvel Spider-Man, but I have no trouble imagining that the web-slinger has or will surpass Nathan Drake. One sliver I can discuss factually is the Uncharted series itself, since Sony has shared multiple milestones this generation. Back in June 2015, the Uncharted series had sold 21 million copies. This is before any of the 3 PS4 games were released, which means this 21 million is solely fueled by the PlayStation 3 and Vita. After Uncharted 4: Thief's End released in May 2016, the game sold 8.7 million copies by year's end. During the 10th anniversary panel at PSX 2017, Naughty Dog and Sony revealed that the entire series had sold 41.7 million copies, including the Nathan Drake Collection and The Lost Legacy. By May 2019, Uncharted 4 surpassed 15 million units sold. Uncharted is not the only series from Naughty Dog that has performed extremely well on the PS4. In 2018, The Last of Us had sold over 17 million copies between both the PS3 and the PS4. Before The Last of Us Remastered released in June 2014, the original PS3 release had sold over 7 million copies. I imagine it's safe to assume that the bulk of that reported 17 million is the PS4 version. Industry analyst Daniel Ahmed reported that The Last of Us had sold over 20 million copies by October 2019. I think all of this data clearly indicates that Naughty Dog continues to be Sony's primary golden goose. Even before the PS4, Naughty Dog cranked out blockbusters on all 3 of Sony's previous hardware generations. No other first-party studio at Sony consistently matches their output in quantity, quality, and sales. Naughty Dog has never been more critically and financially successful. Beyond numbers, Naughty Dog has pushed both themselves and the video game industry by telling some of the most engaging narratives that leverage the unique abilities of gameplay to elicit empathy. How did Naughty Dog actually pull it off, though? What lessons did they learn, implement, and explore on the PS4? What did it cost their team, both personally and professionally? How has their PS4 catalog defined the studio in a way no previous generation has? Recommended reading and viewing. Naughty Dog didn't just stroll into the PS4 generation and crush it. They've been a PlayStation titan for nearly 25 years. If you'd like to know their history up to the release of The Last of Us on PS3 in 2013, I highly recommend IGN's Rising to Greatness, The History of Naughty Dog by Colin Moriarty. Published in October 2013, Colin spent a ton of time talking to the people over at Naughty Dog and wrote a definitive history on the studio. Part 5, which would have focused on The Last of Us specifically, never came to light, but the 4 published parts are an excellent chronological telling of the studio's history. Another read that I found essential was the second chapter of Blood, Sweat, and Pixels by Jason Schreier, aptly titled Uncharted 4. Jason provides a look into the development of Uncharted 4, A Thief's End, through the lens of developer crunch, which is when staff work numerous extra hours to get a project out the door due to pressures put on by themselves or external factors. I'll pull a few choice quotes from the book, but that chapter, really the whole book, offers a peek behind the pixels that bring beloved games to life. You can buy Jason's book on Amazon. Another option is to check out your public library. Some even allow you to rent books digitally through apps like Hoopla. I checked my library's digital catalog, and they had Blood, Sweat, and Pixels. It's certainly an option if you don't want to pay for the book and just want to read the Uncharted 4 chapter. For those who are more visually inclined, PlayStation produced a retrospective in 2014 to commemorate the 30th anniversary of Naughty Dog. It covers the same era as Colin's history, but appears to gloss over some of the tougher times at the studio and has fewer sources. However, it's great to watch and hear the developer speak with accompanying visuals. Another video recommendation is the documentary following the development of The Last of Us specifically. Grounded, The Making of The Last of Us follows Naughty Dog's attempt to be a 2-team studio in the creation of their most critically acclaimed property. It is on YouTube for free and gets 2 thumbs up from me. One last bit is this talk that Neil Druckmann gave at the Toronto chapter of the IGDA in 2013 about writing honestly. It sheds light on the creative process and origins of The Last of Us. It is a helpful talk to listen to as it covers the game just before this history really starts. I found it to be a fascinating talk, especially so many years later. These recommendations are wonderful insights and provide longer-term context for what I want to explore. They are not essential to follow along with any specific quote or reference that I cite. I will do my best to provide an active link to. Check out this RSS link to a folder with all of the links that I cite in this piece. This has been the first part of Chasing the Stick, the history of Naughty Dog during the PS4 era. If you'd like more, head over to maxfrequency.net. The next episode will discuss the development of The Last of Us and how it changed the course of Naughty Dog.